You ever experienced a moment where someone stares at something you own and behaves like it already belongs to them? That's exactly what happened with my HOA neighbor, let's call her Karen, when she decided my truck, my pride and joy, should somehow end up in her son's hands like it was some kind of neighborhood giveaway. And she didn't stop at just suggesting it. No, she actually called the police on me, convinced she could pressure me into handing it over. What she had no idea about was that I had someone powerful backing me, someone who wouldn't let her little plan slide. It all began on a quiet Saturday morning. I was outside in my driveway washing my truck, a deep blue Ford I had spent years customizing. Every bolt, every polished chrome detail meant something. It wasn't just transportation, it was a reflection of me. As I wiped it down carefully, I noticed Karen standing across the street watching. Her arms were crossed and her lips were pursed like she'd just tasted something sour. At first I ignored her, thinking maybe it was just envy. But then she started walking toward me with that overly sweet fake smile I'd come to recognize all too well. "Your truck just sits here most of the time," she said. "My son could really use a dependable vehicle. You should do the right thing and sell it to us." I almost dropped the towel in my hand. Was she actually serious? This wasn't some junker sitting abandoned somewhere. This was my pride and effort. I laughed it off, thinking she had to be joking, but Karen didn't handle rejection well. Her smile disappeared instantly, replaced by a sharp, irritated tone. "Don't be selfish," she snapped. "He needs it more than you do. If you don't agree, I'll have to take other measures." I brushed it off at the time. But 2 days later, when I pulled into my driveway, I saw flashing red and blue lights. A police officer waved me over and said they had received a complaint about a stolen vehicle. Karen was standing nearby, looking smug and satisfied, telling the officers that I had taken her son's truck and refused to return it. For a moment, I was speechless. My truck? Stolen? I had every document, receipts, registration, proof of ownership, everything. But Karen stood there so confidently. Like she truly believed she'd win this. What she didn't realize was that she had seriously underestimated me. Because the person who helped finalize all the paperwork when I bought the truck, my brother-in-law, was the state attorney. And once he stepped in, her entire fantasy was about to collapse. The officers remained near my driveway. One of them was jotting notes while Karen leaned forward, pointing at my truck like she was presenting a case in court. Her son, a tall, skinny guy in his 20s, stood behind her with a smug grin, as if he already owned it. "Officer, that truck was promised to my son," Karen said firmly. "He has the title. This man is refusing to give it back." I couldn't believe how bold she was being. Promised? Title? It was completely made up. I went inside and grabbed the folder where I kept all the truck's documents, registration, bill of sale, insurance, VIN, everything clearly under my name. I brought it out and handed it over. "This is the truth," I said. "That truck is mine and always has been. She's lying." The officer flipped through the papers, nodding as he read. That should have been the end of it. But Karen wasn't finished. "Those documents are fake," she shouted, her voice cutting through the neighborhood. "He forged them. I know people who can prove it. My son deserves that truck and I'm not letting this go." The nerve of it was unbelievable. The officers looked uncomfortable, clearly aware of the legitimacy of my paperwork, but also dealing with a woman causing a full scene in the middle of the street. By now, neighbors had started gathering along the sidewalks. Some whispered to each other, others simply watched. A few of them knew Karen's reputation, but others looked unsure, maybe even curious about what was really going on. That's when I decided to make a call. I stepped back, pulled out my phone, and dialed my brother-in-law. "Hey," I said calmly, making sure Karen could hear me. "I need you here. Karen's claiming my truck is hers and the police are involved." There was a brief pause on the line, followed by a sigh. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, he replied. When I hung up, Karen's expression shifted slightly. "Who did you just call?" she demanded. "You'll see," I said, crossing my arms. The officers stayed put, though their patience was clearly wearing thin as Karen kept going on about fairness in the community and how neighbors should support each other's children. Her son remained behind her, still smirking like everything was already settled in his favor. Then, right on time, a black SUV pulled up. My brother-in-law stepped out, dressed sharply in a suit, his badge clipped to his belt. Karen's eyes widened instantly, and the confidence she had been carrying began to crumble. The small crowd went quiet, sensing the shift. The situation she thought she controlled had suddenly become much more serious. The moment he walked toward us, the entire atmosphere changed. The murmuring neighbors fell silent, and even the officer straightened up slightly. Karen, however, tried to recover quickly. She forced that fake sweet smile back onto her face. "Oh, thank goodness you're here," she said eagerly, acting as if she had called him herself. "You must be the investigator. Finally, someone who can see the truth about this stolen truck." My brother-in-law Daniel didn't entertain her act. He walked directly to the officers, showed his credentials, and asked to review the documents. After briefly going through them, he turned toward Karen. His face was calm, cold, and professional, nothing like the friendly reaction she had been expecting. "Ma'am," he said in a steady tone, "everything here checks out. The truck legally belongs to him. So what exactly are you accusing him of?" Karen's eyes shifted around, searching for anyone to back her up. "I'm saying," she snapped, "that he deceived us. That truck was supposed to go to my son. He somehow cheated us out of it. He doesn't even deserve to own it. He hardly drives it anyway. My son actually needs it for work." Daniel interrupted her, his voice sharp and cutting through her words. "Needing something doesn't entitle you to take it, and filing a false report with the police is a serious matter. Are you really willing to take it that far?" The officers exchanged quick glances. Up until now, they had been entertaining Karen, but with the state attorney standing there, the gravity of the situation became impossible to ignore. Karen's son lost his smug expression, shifting nervously as the reality of the situation began to sink in. For the first time, it looked like he understood that this might not end well for either of them. Still, Karen made one last attempt to regain control. "This is harassment," she shouted. "You're all teaming up against me. I'm calling the HOA. They'll support me. They always do." A few neighbors couldn't help but chuckle quietly. Everyone knew Karen had influence within the HOA, but that influence didn't extend beyond neighborhood rules. It certainly didn't override the law, and Daniel wasn't about to let her forget it. "Call whoever you like," Daniel replied firmly. "But if you continue making false accusations, I'll have no choice but to open a formal investigation into your conduct. Filing a false police report comes with consequences you clearly don't understand." The color drained from Karen's face, and for once she had nothing to say. The officers closed their notebooks, now clearly more frustrated with her than with me. The crowd slowly began to disperse, people whispering about how far she had taken things this time. But I knew better. Karen wasn't the type to walk away quietly. Even though she had been shaken, Karen didn't give up. Over the next week, I caught her staring at my truck every time she walked by. Her son avoided looking at me altogether, clearly embarrassed. But she was far from finished. Instead of admitting defeat, she changed her approach. Soon, I started receiving HOA violation notices. One claimed my truck was too large for the driveway. Another said it was decreasing property values. One even described it as an eyesore. Each notice was more absurd than the last. She was trying to pressure me through fines, hoping I'd eventually give in and hand over the truck just to avoid the hassle. What she didn't realize was that Daniel had already predicted this move. He told me to document everything, every letter, every interaction, every picture of my properly parked truck. Following his advice, I kept detailed records. Within days, we had built a file thick enough to support a solid case. Then things escalated. One evening, I came home and saw a long scratch carved across the side of my truck. It was deep, intentional, and impossible to ignore. My heart sank instantly. This wasn't just petty harassment anymore. This was vandalism, and there was only one person in the neighborhood bold enough and angry enough to do something like that. Daniel acted immediately. He filed a police report for me and personally took charge of the situation. When officers began checking the area, it didn't take long before a neighbor's security camera revealed the truth. There she was, Karen sneaking into my driveway at night, key in hand, dragging it across the paint with a look of satisfaction on her face. The footage left no room for doubt. The very next morning, Karen was confronted at her front door, not just by the police, but by Daniel as well. Her confidence disappeared instantly. She stumbled over excuses, tried to blame random teenagers, and even claimed the video had been altered. But the evidence was undeniable. She was cited for vandalism, hit with heavy fines, and warned that any further harassment would lead to criminal charges. As for the HOA, once Daniel presented them with proof of her false report, ongoing harassment, and vandalism, they couldn't defend her. They distanced themselves immediately. Karen's reputation collapsed overnight. Neighbors who once tolerated her behavior turned away, disgusted by how far she had gone. And my truck? It remained right where it belonged, parked in my driveway. Clean, polished, and shining like a symbol of standing firm. Karen had tried everything: lies, police involvement, HOA pressure, even destruction. And in the end, she lost. Because sometimes standing your ground isn't just about protecting what's yours. It's about proving that no matter how entitled someone feels, the truth will always prevail over their schemes.